We've had a wonderful time of worship this morning, worshiping and glorifying the Lord together. And this morning, we're privileged and blessed to have Logan Cooke with us, as I shared with you before. He currently plays in the NFL with the Jacksonville Jaguars. We're going to have a conversation, kind of how this started as I reached out to him about a year ago, actually, about this time a year ago, looking to put something together, see if we could work this out. He has a lot of friends in this area that have known Logan a long time. And as it's kind of got out on social media, you're going to be here. Quite a few folks that I know that went to Mississippi State have expressed that they've met you and know you from your time there. And some are maybe wondering, okay, so we usually have a time of preaching here. So how's today going to look different, and what are we doing? So in talking about this and kind of setting this up, and I shared this with Logan just in the last few weeks as we thought through this and prayed through this, is that the reality of life is simply this, is that there are a few of us that will feel that the Lord is calling them into some type of vocational ministry. And we are blessed at Thompson to have 4 pastors that are attempting to serve us to the best of their ability. I'm one of them attempting to the best of my ability. But here's the reality. So of the probably 200 and something people in this room right now, that there are 4 of us, maybe a few more, that serve in vocational ministry. But the reality is the vast majority of people in this room don't. What probably happened in your life, you prayed through things, you sought the Lord in things, but also what you discovered is you had some passions in life, some things you enjoyed in life, some things you're really good at, maybe some things you had been trained at. And so you sought out things that you like to do. You found out you were really good at them. Then, once you realized you enjoyed it, you found a way to make a living doing it. And in the middle of all that, providing for your family, making a living, hopefully you're serving the Lord. I would imagine that is what the majority of the lives in this room look like, is you figured out what you enjoy to do, you have a passion for it, you felt the Lord open some doors, you were good at it, you provided for your family, and in the process you're attempting to serve the Lord, whatever that looks like, right? And so we have Logan Cooke with us, who's living that kind of lifestyle. He figured out he loved the game of football. He's really good at football. He can punt the ball better than the vast majority of Americans. All right, if I'm not mistaken, he was in the Pro Bowl. He was an All-Pro this year with that, and so just laying it out. I did ask him, it's how he comes up, I did ask him, like, he's 6'5", right? I asked him if I had any shot, if I would have tried a little bit harder. He said I could have made it at my height if I'd run a 4.3 40. And that wasn't going to happen either. So I didn't have much of a chance. But he found something he's really good at. So look, he's really good at what he does. But also he has a foundation we'll talk about a little bit. And in numerous ways, he's serving the Lord in the midst of doing whatever he does. And in that environment. His grandfather was a Baptist minister. His dad is serving the Lord in leading worship in a local church. So with that, I want to invite Logan up. We're just going to have a conversation. As he's here, listen to what Peter tells us, very basically. In 1 Peter 3:15, but sanctify Christ as the Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you, yet with gentleness and reverence. And so this conversation we're going to have is simply an attempt to have a normal conversation with a guy that is really good at something. He has a passion for something. He's providing for his family. We're going to talk a little bit about the Lord, and in the process we'll give an explanation of why we have the hope that we do. And so with that, I'm going to turn this mic over to Logan, all right? And just we're going to hang out. I'm going to sit over here because the distance will make me look taller, right? But we have Logan, for those of you that don't know Logan. So Logan went to Columbia Academy, right? Then to Mississippi State. I think there's a few Bulldogs in the room. Are there any Bulldogs in the room? That was so mild. If he had been an LSU Tiger, that would have been way louder, is all I'm going to say about that. And we'll leave that alone. But he was in Starkville, or Stark Vegas, as some of you call that. Wife, Mary Minger, did I say that correctly? And then 2 sons, Cooper and Tate. Drafted in 2018. He has a foundation. The foundation benefit was last night. He also has a fellow former teammate with him today. It was Chandler Brewer with the Tennessee Titans. We're glad to have you. Our worship pastor's name is also a Brewer. If he asks you if you're related, you just ignore that later. But we'll see where that goes later. But Logan, just giving you the floor, tell us a little bit about yourself. Obviously, we know you're in the NFL. We're going to talk about that. But just life in general, who are you? And can you share a little bit about your faith and just how you came to place your faith in Jesus.
Yeah. First and foremost, thank you guys for having me. This is I love this setting. It's I'm not a pastor. He kind of said earlier, I'm not called in the ministry from a pastor standpoint, but I do feel like he said, we're all called in our own environment. So yeah, this is super genuine, and I like the way we're doing this. But yeah, so I obviously grew up just down the road in Darby, Mississippi. Have a lot of family here. I'm not going to say their last name. Don't want you to correlate us together way too much. But no, a ton of family in this church, and yeah, I actually got my first ticket on this road right here one time. Where we were headed down turkey hunting, and I was headed to Uncle Dennis's house, and whipped it around really quick. So that was, I know the ticket did get ripped up, but Uncle Dennis still ratted me out with my dad. So, but no, it's good to be here, and yeah, I grew up in Darby, Mississippi, and came to know the Lord at 9 years old. Grew up in you said it, my dad's leads worship at our church, and then my grandpa's a Southern Baptist preacher, so I grew up in it and grew up in the Word, and I think it was actually at a kids rally that CA was putting on. Columbia Academy is where I went, and yeah, I felt I'd known about Jesus. I'd known all the stories you learn in Sunday school and Bible school and everything, and but that moment as a 9-year-old kid at a kids rally, I was crying, something was happening. I didn't know what was going on, but I knew it was something that I'd never felt before, and nothing happened that night as far as me actually taking action. But I think it was a week or so later, I called my dad down, and he sits in the front row like any good, pastor's son does. And I grabbed him and went and gave my life to Jesus there at Advent Baptist Church in Columbia. And, there's been a lot of growth from growing up, obviously, in the Bible Belt, like all of us are. And you go to Mississippi State, which is still very, very much in the middle of that. And so, yeah, there's a lot of going from high school, or as a kid, going to high school, and then migrating to college, and obviously there's way more temptation in college and things that happen, things that are put in front of you in college that I grew there as well, and then obviously leaving this whole environment here and going to Florida. There was being in the NFL and being in that locker room environment, and some of those other things that kind of come with being in the NFL, and so there's growth there, and there's still growth today. So it's cool to see kind of the evolution of your faith from a standpoint of a little boy who comes here to know that I want to know Jesus, to now you're still growing here, whatever this is 20 years later. So.
Okay. So you were drafted in 2018. So you've been in the NFL now 6 years. Tell us, is that right?
Going on 8, but.
Going on 8, okay, yeah. My bad. 7
Good,
years.
yeah.
That's bad math by me. 2018 counted. Okay, so that, yeah, it did. So what is it like? So you talk about playing in the NFL. You're really good at what you do, made the Pro Bowl. What is it like living out your faith in the NFL? I would imagine most people in this room have a preconceived notion simply from what we see on television. And I would hope and imagine that most people in this room understand that everything they see on television is not real life. Some of it is, and some of it is framed. So what is it like in the NFL? What is it like living out faith in the NFL? Do you have a lot of guys around you that probably come from a similar faith, or not so much? Just what does that look like? Because obviously you have a perspective we don't.
Yeah. Again, this is a learning curve for me. I never wanted to play in the NFL, just being completely honest. I wanted to play in the SEC, and I did that, and I was perfectly content for that to end there. So my view of the NFL was always what the media portrays, right? The media, if there's people involved with the media here, certain media, I'm sorry, but at some level, all media is low-key a little crooked in professional sport, because they want to portray this crazy story, whether it's good or bad, but usually the bad story seems to hit. So you see a lot of that. You see a lot of a lot of the good stuff kind of get thrown under the radar. So coming into the NFL, you have this preconceived notion of what it's like, what the people are like, and it couldn't be further from the truth. It's obviously one of my old teammates is here, and he's seen it kind of in Jacksonville at the time. He came in at a good time as far as the way our I guess faith body of believers, our Bible study group was. When I got to Jacksonville, it was we had a Bible study in a group, but it was fairly small. We just got a new chaplain. He actually played in the league for a while, so he was kind of trying to get things going, and so I stepped into kind of a smaller believer setting. But aside from the believer aspect of it, just get this out there. 99% of players in the NFL are great dudes. Like, their fathers, their husbands, at that point, you have high school, college. College weeds out a lot of these, kind of a lot of the bad apples, so to speak. So when you get to the NFL, you see a lot of stories again that get blasted, and a lot of that stuff does happen. But again, there's so much more good behind the scenes and good dudes in the league that you kind of don't hear about and don't get to see those sides of stories. But so our Bible study group in 2018 was fairly small. We were meeting at a guy's house and doing it that way. And again, we play on Sundays, so it kind of makes it tough. But luckily, the church that we go to down there in Jacksonville has a Thursday night service, so we get to do that there. But so as I guess 19, 20, 21, I'd say kind of when our Bible study groups seemed to grow a lot. And then 2022, we got Coach Peterson in, huge believer, just love the guy. His wife's incredible. And honestly, he brought just a sense of Jesus to our building, which was incredible to have. They had coaches' Bible studies every Friday mornings. Our players' Bible studies just kind of kept growing. And it's a trickling effect. If the coaches are doing it at a level, if the coaches are negative one day at practice or a week, the team's going to feel the same way. So throughout the course of a year, you can kind of see the coaches leading in this spiritual role, and then the players just kind of followed. And our Bible study group grew very well. And we always do it on Monday mornings, which we do it on Monday mornings for the reason of if it's a great game or a bad game, like no matter what, we're going to be there for Monday morning talking about the Word. And it's sometimes it's humbling after a bad game to go in there and have to put on a smile and forget about it for a little bit. But I think it's good, the kind of the time that we do it. And then our chapels on Saturday nights grew so much when Coach Peterson came there, and it's cool to see the kind of the Spirit working there, and kind of how much it's grown since I've been able to be there and see the way our chaplain has kind of grown it. But yeah, our faith body within the team it's really incredible. A lot of days you come out to practice and warming up, you have praise and worship music going out there. So I just love when I speak at churches. I love giving that little bit of insight because a lot of people really don't get to see that.
Right, and for those of us obviously that are not in the NFL, what I also heard from that is leadership is tremendously important. And whatever roles of leadership we have, obviously what you just said is how we lead out in our environments impacts those that are under our leadership. I mean, you said Coach Peterson came in, created that culture and environment, and you can see it trickle throughout the team, which you've kind of answered this already, but obviously you're on the road for half the year, right? And so we do have, which you've kind of alluded to this, we do have some offshore workers in here that are at church half of their life, and so you're on the road on Sunday as part of the profession that comes with that. What is it like attempting to live out faith and grow in faith? You've kind of alluded to it, but you're not in this setting every Sunday, so what does that look like? You've mentioned Thursday night, figuring out a way to worship, Monday night Bible study. If you just want to lead into that a little bit more of just what does it look like growing out your faith in a non-traditional way of a Sunday morning, Sunday night worship?
Yeah, honestly, I think it grows your faith even more. I mean, if you just coming from someone who grew up in church every Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, it was more or less not that it was a routine, but it's like, hey, this is what we're doing. And again, that's awesome. But when you get outside of that, it's easy to not go. It's easy to not go to Bible study. It's easy to, whenever you don't have an excuse to not go to church on Sunday, it's hard to miss Sunday church. But whenever you can't go, you have it's easy to not be in your word and not be growing in your faith. So whenever you don't have access to this, honestly, I think it grows. It makes you dive into the word more throughout the week individually because you're not getting that Sunday morning worship. And that's something that I've grown in my faith a ton. I kind of went through this phase, I would say, through college where I was reading my Bible. I was praying every morning, every night, but it became like a routine, and that trickled over when I got into the league. And again, I was in my word, so to speak, but it wasn't like I was pushing to grow. And again, I met my wife in college. She's just gold, and she made me grow so much in my faith from a standpoint of loving people. There was a sense of take care of Logan, if that makes sense. That's kind of where I got to a place in life. When I got to Jacksonville in 2018, I was going to church. 2019, I'm going to church. I'm doing me. It was so selfish to make sure that I was okay. And I felt myself let's see, I guess it would be 2022 fall. I got into a place of legit depression. And I've spoke to youth rallies, spoke to a lot of teams in high schools, and I always tell the story because I feel like it's a scary topic today in society. You hear about all these high school kids and things happening. It's just like, it's mind blowing. But as an NFL player, I just signed a new contract in 2021. Things were awesome. I had my first kid. Life was incredible. And I literally caught myself driving to work every morning praying for joy. It was just, which is like, it makes no sense. You know, and you hear a lot of these stories. A lot of big time players that kind of come out and talk about depression situations. And I wouldn't call it, at the time, I would not tell you that I was in a state of depression, you know, but yeah, I was. And it really boiled down to, I feel like there's these stages of faith, whether it's 9-year-old Logan coming down here and giving his life to Christ, and then high school Logan being president of FCA, and then college Logan of like, okay, you're in a college environment. How does this look? You're not back home with mom and dad anymore, going to Edna Baptist Church. You know, you're having to take these steps on your own, and I feel like that's a growth, and then growth from there to the NFL. Okay, now you're away from Mississippi, you're away from your family, you're by yourself, which is sad. I woke up Christmas Day and I was shooting ducks because you know, all my friends have family down there. So Christmas Day, what else am I gonna do? So I went duck hunting down there in the marsh, and duck hunting's not great down there. So for me to go out there, I just really wanted to go. And I remember I FaceTimed my parents, and they were having Christmas morning. Everyone was happy, whatever. And afterwards, I was so sad because I'm like, it's Christmas Day. I'm by myself. It was one of the first times where it hit me like I'm alone, you know. And so yeah, there was growth there, and then now obviously with a family, there's growth of having to be a leader of a home, having to be a good husband. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is there's like these stages of faith where you keep growing, and for me, 2022 helped me to grow to a sense of me taking care of myself wasn't taking care of myself, if that makes sense. For me to take care of myself and do what I was called to do, I had to take care of other people as well, and that's I don't know. I felt led to kind of be more active in my faith and dive more into what I was called to be. Like you said, we're not all called to be pastors and music ministers, and at that point, I was called to be more than what I was being in the locker room setting. If that makes sense. So I talked to our chaplain in Jacksonville. Kind of told him what I was dealing with. Kind of told him where I was feeling. I'm like, Mo, I ain't gonna lie to you. I don't know. Like, everything's great. You know, I don't know why I feel this way. And he said, well, how about you start praying for God to take you out of your comfort zone and like take you places you know, do things that you would never do. So I started praying that, and let me tell you what, be very careful because you'll end up here, you know. Now I can't make this up. I pray that prayer every morning, every night, like, God, please put me out of my comfort zone, push me where you want me to go, do whatever you want me to do, you know. And a couple weeks later, I got asked to speak to a football team down there, which I just, you know, I'm not a pastor, I'm not a public speaker, but I felt called. I got asked, and I said, hey, I've been praying for this, so here we go. And then a few weeks later, I got asked to speak at something else, and I got asked to speak at a youth rally a few months later, and it just kept growing and growing, and then now we have our foundation rolling, and it's just like, you know, don't be afraid to pray for things, but be careful. Like, prayer is real, right? So if you're asking for it, be prepared for it to happen. But yeah, I just learned that where I was at in my faith, again, I was taking care of myself, and I was, you know, doing the right thing, so to speak. But I'm saying we're called to way more in your office, in your school, on your team. Like, you are in a ministry setting, whether you believe it or not, and that's kind of what I had to realize.
You're being real in that moment, and I appreciate you being real, talking a little bit about the depth of depression. Obviously, you would know the depth of that more than anyone else in the room. But you know this, you remember this growing up, watching athletes. So for the vast majority, especially the kids in the room, hopefully the adults understand that y'all are individuals, you're men, you're living life just like we are, you're just doing what you do. But I would imagine for the kids and the teenagers in the room, they look at someone like you and say, he's at the top of the mountain, he plays his position, he's one of the 32 best in the NFL, but more than that, he made the Pro Bowl, so he's in the top upper percent. So everything's rolling, and still in that moment, you had some down moments. And so I appreciate you being transparent, because it just reminds all of us that the things that we do no matter how successful you can be, there can still be down moments, and obviously the loneliness and with your family is tremendously important. And so I appreciate that it shows the humanity of someone that does what you do, but it also reminds us that even reaching the mountain doesn't fulfill all the holes in our lives. And so I appreciate you being transparent with that. We're going to talk about your foundation more in a few moments. You don't have to name drop, so you can answer this however you want to. In the NFL, you're a believer. You talked about Bible studies. You talked about coaches. Do you feel that you're in the minority of faith in the NFL as being a believer in Jesus Christ? Do you think it's like 50-50, or would you say the majority of people, despite what we see in the media, probably are people of faith in Jesus? Kind of, I know that's your perception. You don't have to name drop, but what do you think about that? What do you see around you?
I don't know. I mean, I think obviously I have a guy here that could answer as well. You want to say it's probably 50-50 on legit believers and non-believers, but I would say it's 99 to 1% of people who get along. Does that make sense? So like the NFL is a huge melting pot. And it's funny. It's so funny to me to hear like my wife's stories about certain wives and the way they always had these little cliques and they're arguing and they're fighting and there's little like, you know, she wore this and this girl tries to up her and all the things, and it's so funny because like their husbands are all just gold, and it's so a locker room is like, I mean, it's how the United States of America should be, but everyone gets along. They disagree on a lot of things, but everyone gets along, and so yeah, there's zero backlash of being a believer in the NFL. There's several people who I know aren't believers, but there isn't any like you're trying to do Bible study, kind of an underground room anywhere. You don't feel that. It's very accepted, and it's very, again, playing worship music in practice. Like those guys who aren't believers don't care, But it's yeah, I would want to say 50-50. It might be more than that, But it's that's people who are very pronounced in it. But you're talking about kind of the peace aspect. This is. Like Jesus is a sense of peace, right? At that point in time of that deal I was dealing with, like I found out that me just going and reading my Bible at night and saying my prayer and go to bed was not what I needed to do. For me to have my sense of peace and be in the Word was like have quiet time. Like don't read your Bible and say your prayer on the way to work. For me, that wasn't working. I was just doing what I was supposed to do. Sit in a dark room at night and pray and meditate, hands open, like it's kind of like your own little worship moment, but that's what I was lacking, and I realized that Jesus was obviously is the source of peace, but I was kind of missing that piece of it at the time, and I see it all the time. I don't see how these guys struggle. If I have a bad game, I always have that Monday morning Bible study to kind of fall back on, and that kind of revamps me and gets me over whatever happened. But yeah, I don't see how a lot of guys struggle, and they don't have. I talk with other teammates about this all the time, like. Someone has a bad game, or in my position, if someone misses a game-winning field goal or whatever, and they're not a believer, like, what do they have? You know what I mean? And so I don't know. That's the side of it when I do have kind of conversations with guys who aren't believers. Yeah, that's always one of my questions. I'm like, if you have a bad game, like, what is your kind of rebound moment? Like, what kind of gets you through it? And for me, knowing that we're called for something way greater than football, and football. I do get asked this a lot too. Like, do you think God likes football? For people who aren't believers, and I do. I think God likes electrical technicians. I think God likes bankers and lawyers and preachers. I mean, because that's a ministry field, and so I think that God created football for that. And hallelujah, love football. But it's yeah, I think we're all called in those certain ministries, and I've had use a position because it would kind of give some stuff away. But I had a guy a couple years ago who was an atheist, and I'd never, just growing up here and going to Mississippi State, I'd never met an atheist, and it was and he was definitely not a bashing atheist from a standpoint of like, you're wrong for this, and it was just like, all right, well, tell me what you think. And he was like, yeah, not really, you know what I mean? So it was very, we had conversation all the time, and so that was another step, and this was 6 months, well, probably closer to a year post asking God to put me out of my comfort zone. Now I have this guy who I have to spend every second of every day with who's an atheist. And yeah, I mean, that was growth for me because I started diving into this because with an atheist, you can't go talk to them about the Bible because they don't believe the Bible's real at all. It's different than someone who's kind of on the fence or they believe there's a God, but is Jesus the way to heaven? Is Jesus is Jesus the source of all that? So I started diving into all these internet deep dark searches of finding history evidence of Jesus' crucifixion, of the Red Sea, the Ark, like all these things that I had to dive into, and I would Google search all night long trying to find stuff, and I'm like screenshotting stuff and go back to them the next day and we're talking about it. So that's another step, just talking about growing. Like I feel like as soon as you stop doing this, you do this. It's not like you sit at a plateau. And just challenge. If there's one thing that I can challenge you with, is just always find a way to keep growing. Whether it's starting a foundation, or whether it's starting to ask God to use you however you think you should, or if you think you're kind of in a stale moment, asking God to use you somewhere that you don't think, I have no idea where I'm going, but Lord, I feel like you're supposed to use me somewhere. Like open that door, and He'll open it. I promise. So.
Like I say, we're going to talk about your foundation in a moment, but with our time left, obviously you play in the NFL. We've talked a lot about faith. If I don't ask you some NFL questions, there's going to be some men and some fans in the room, including some women fans, that they're not going to be happy with me. So I have to ask you some of these questions. All right. What is the most scared you've ever been in a game? And you can be rapid fire, however you want to do it.
I don't think this is a hard answer. I just really don't. I can't think of a time I was super scared. I will say that, so one time we were playing, I will tell you this one, we were playing Denver, and it was kind of just very windy game, and my snapper at the time, loved the guy, he rolled one back to me in pregame, and a lot of times it was pregame, especially if it's raining. A lot of times you'll have balls skipping around and someone's snapping them, and my uncle said he skipped it back there, but I tried to catch it, and usually if I see it skipping in pregame, I just let it go, and I tried to grab it, and it broke this bone right here, like dislocated my thumb and kind of fractured this. And it's in pregame, and I obviously can't squeeze my thumb, can't feel it, and so I'm like, oh my goodness. And so I go to the trainer and get it taped up, and I'm like, well, I'm just punting. It's not my right hand, so I can hold the ball, it's fine. But holding field goals is by far the scariest part of my job. It's almost like, I'm sure there's some ropers in here, maybe we're in that part of the country. A header and a healer, if you go drive to New Mexico for a roping and the header misses, the healer just goes home. So that's kind of how my job is as a holder. If I don't have a good hold, the kicker that's making however much money doesn't, it really messes his opportunity up. So go throughout the game, and it was all fine. And then we actually driving down the field and ended up having to kick a game-winning field goal. And field goals was the only thing because I have to hold with this hand. So that was probably the one time where I had zero confidence in myself at all. So that was a tough moment, but we made the kick and won. But that was, that's probably one of the most nervous moments I've ever had.
What are you typically thinking about before the snap? Punt or field goal, either one?
Man, there's a lot. Punting in college was very catch the ball, kick it as far as you can kick it. So I would either bomb it or shank it. That's kind of my MO. That's what I was good at. And if I shanked it, I heard it. I heard about it. But there was when I got to the NFL, I kind of learned the different game of punting from a standpoint of that guy's really good. The guy catching the ball is really good. So just try to keep it away from that guy. And it kind of hit in my mind. I'm like, so if I just keep it out of that guy's hands, then we're fine. So I started playing a lot of keep away stuff, and we hit a lot of different punts, which is another conversation. But yeah, so really it's just, there's so much. If the ball's in the right hash, wins left to right, there's a certain punt I'm going to hit and where I'm going to get it. If the ball's right hash, wins right to left, I'm probably going left, but we're on the right hash, so now you got to get the ball way outside the number, so your angle's going to be further. So now you got to be more offset to the right. So there's all this going. All of a sudden, that's on second down. Now second down, they're in a sweep to the right. Now it's third down on the other hash. Well, now everything's flips. So it's nonstop. I know that's a lot, but that's what my mind's doing the entire time we're on offense.
So you're saying even for the kicker, the game is technical.
All right, kickers are weird. I'm not a kicker. Do not put that on me.
Excuse me, a punter.
I'm a punter.
Kicker. I'm
yeah.
sorry.
No, it's.
Whoops, waded into that, didn't I? Sorry.
Yeah, no, there's so much going on, and after a game, and again, I might play 4 or 5 snaps a game, but you have to be to be one of the best in the world. I learned from the guys who when I got in the league were the best, and kind of pick their brain on things. And that's what I learned is like you have to be queued up the whole game. And first downs might look different than second down. Then, like I said, they run something the other way. Well, now you're on a different hash. Everything completely changes. So there's a lot going through your mind, and then you got to catch it. So that's always there too, So just don't drop it. But
All right, so back to faith. You mentioned your foundation, and as we get near the end of our time, you mentioned the foundation. We're going to put the graphic up of your foundation. How does your faith influence your foundation? Obviously, since 2021, 2022, you felt this was a door that you should open to walk through to serve the Lord, serve faith. So, what is the foundation? What does it look like, and how are you using that for the gospel?
yeah, so talking about the growth aspect, going back to kind of the full cycle of growing in your faith, there was growing up in a tithing household. That's what you did, right? I knew that. I knew it was biblical. I knew it was 10% right off the rip. That's what we're doing. And so whenever I first got paid, there's kind of a funny story of how that happened. The first check I ever got, I went and bought a boat. I'd had this boat picked out that I was going to buy. It was a camouflage G3 21-foot little center console boat. And as soon as I got money to go buy it, I went and bought it. And then I realized that I didn't have 10% of what I'd gotten paid left to tithe. And for a few weeks went on where I was like, when I get my next check after the first game, I'll get even with God. That's kind of how it worked. And then I'm telling you, we were getting ready for week 1 in the NFL, my first game ever, and I'm like, I can't sleep. I'm losing my mind. I'm like, and again, I do not think God punishes you if you don't. If I didn't tithe right now, I don't think God's punishing me. But I do know that I knew what was right. I knew what I should have done, and I was losing my mind. It was driving me crazy. So I called my dad. Dad's a banker, and I was like, Dad, I need a loan. I got it. We play in New York in a few weeks. And I got to get a loan. I'm losing my mind. And sure enough, I took out a loan to pay my first tithe, and so paid that back pretty quick. But no, it's kind of a funny story. But yeah, so obviously tithing, we're called as believers to tithe, and then after tithing for a couple years, I guess 2-3 years, I got married, and obviously she's on board with everything, and I just felt like there was more, right? I felt like we were blessed enough in this situation. 10% just wasn't enough, but I also didn't feel like I needed to start just tithing 20%, if that makes sense. And nothing against the tithing, but it was like, I feel like I'm led, obviously, to give this 10%, but I feel like we're also led for more. And she had been feeling the same thing. So we started praying, like, hey, like, God, we know we want to give something else, but like, open the door. We didn't want to just give it to whatever charity just because we needed to give to something at the time. And so we started praying about it. And she had this nursing friend that she had gone nursing school with and followed her on Instagram, and she had started her husband had started this organization, Zoe Ministries, and he's from Cleveland, Mississippi. Long story short, he went as soon as he graduated college, he went straight to Kenya on a mission trip and ended up staying over there for like 6 months. Started an orphanage, and now that's turned into water projects as well with the orphanage. And so that's what they had started. So she brought this to me, and I'm like, that's awesome. Like, and my wife, she was a nurse. She was a pediatric ICU. She was in the PICU, pediatric ICU nurse, and just grinding. And after a couple kids, she's stopped working at the moment. But so she'd always felt led to go to Africa, kind of on a mission trip and do some medical projects and stuff. And so she'd always been tied with Africa. So she brings this to me, and I'm like, yeah, 100%, like, let's answer prayer, like, let's do it. So we sponsored our first well with Zoe Ministries, just individually. And these water well projects, they're going to these remote villages. Long story short, they're finding these people who are in need of water, but instead of just giving them water and leaving, they're creating a committee within these villages and taking them to where their orphanage and kind of like their center, I guess their headquarters is there in Kitale in Kenya, and they're training them for like a week or two on gardening, on washing clothes, on how to use water outside of going to the river and bathing. And then after they feel like they're empowered and kind of more knowledgeable of how to use the resource, then they'll drill water wells in these places. So instead of just dropping a well and bouncing, they're actually empowering these people. And then the next year we sponsored our second well with Zoe. And then again, there was another growth opportunity. We were like, hey, we feel like we have a platform. We feel like we have a great backing of friends and family back home that would support us in whatever we want to do. And you see a lot of foundations throughout the NFL, players using their platform to start their foundations, organizations, and doing really well with it. So we just felt led to start our foundation. So I got on the phone with a buddy of my dad's, who's a buddy of mine, with Catch a Dream Foundation, Fathers in the Field, another ministry, and then another ministry from Jacksonville. It's kind of like hunting side of things. I love to hunt and fish, so I kind of wanted to do something that, I wanted that to be kind of part of it. I love kids, love taking kids hunting and fishing, and so I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I got him on a call, and I was like, this is kind of what I'm thinking. This is what we feel led to start a foundation. I don't know what I want to do, to go towards, and they were very, very knowledgeable, and they said, look, with your time, with your schedule, use your resource, but partner with an organization. And it just like light bulb went off. It made way too much sense. We've been partnering with them individually for 2 years now. And so I hit up Taylor, the guy who runs Zoe, and I was like, hey, this is what we kind of want to do. Start a foundation. Would you guys be cool if we partner with you for the first year? And we did it. And it's just incredible to see. We had our first banquet this time last year, and our goal was $60,000 for the year for 2024. And that because the wells, depending on how deep, wherever the location is, how hard it is to access, roughly they're 15 to 20 grand. So we were like, if we get 60 grand, that's 3 wells. First year would be awesome. And we just gave them a check last night for just over $100,000. So, it was cool. It was cool to see God use that and kind of the people who have helped us out with that. And then we had our second banquet last night. And we're actually able to go to Africa and see some of the projects we've done last summer. And got to see some of the work firsthand and see some of the initial wells we've been able to implant there through Zoe. And it's just kind of fun to see where it's going to go now.
Okay. And so with that, as a church, for Logan being here, as a church, we kind of talked about him being here, and we're going to be making a donation to his foundation on behalf of the church. We'll be talking about that a little bit this evening. We'll be doing that. And then last but not least, so I do want you, so first off, introduce your former teammate to us, since he's made it all the way with you from your banquet last night. And then I'll have one last question for you.
Yeah, it's Chandler Brewer. I ain't going to tell him to stand up or nothing. He's big enough. He's kind of funny story how I met Chandler. Obviously, we played together, and that's how we met. But first day of, I guess it would be OTAs. We do all our physicals and everything, and it's just a long day of just meetings and physicals, and just you're ready to go home. And I'm sitting over there in the corner on my phone in line to do some body scan or something, and Chandler comes up, and first off, he talks like a crawfish like we do. So it was just like, all of a sudden, like this guy, And he just, hey man, are you Logan? And then we kind of got talking, and then we knew some mutual people. Got talking about turkey hunting. Just killed public land turkey in Alabama, so check. We can get along. And so we got to hanging out, and great dude. His wife Bailey, awesome people, and he's Super Bowl champion in LA with us with the Jags for a little while, and now he's with the Titans. But great dude.
Last question, all right? Yeah, you can him. Absolutely. So, in all this said, is we kind of put a bow on it, and then I'll make a comment at the end of it, right when we wrap up. But if you could give one piece of advice to anyone in the room, whether it's an adult, whether it's a teenager, when it comes to living out faith, what would be your one last piece of advice? In all that we've talked about, how would you put a bow on that?
Yeah, I've said it a lot, I feel like, but just keep growing. I feel like, and at some point, if you feel like you don't know how to grow, then pray about it. I was told by my chaplain to pray for God to put me out of my comfort zone, and you end up places like this, and it's cool when you pray about it. Prayer is real, like I said. So just trust it and pray with intent of talking to God. You get to talk to the Creator of the universe, like understand that, and that's something that I think helped my prayer life when I realize I'm not just praying and saying words. I'm getting to talk to the guy who made everything. And also, like, you kind of talk about the ministry. Like, we all have our own ministry, and whether it's work or school or football or, an actual pastor. And I think that sometimes witnessing in our mind can be scripture, or it can be come to church with me, or it can be, you're actually, telling someone the gospel, and that needs to happen in certain scenarios. But my wife says it best. Sometimes she's only Jesus as someone can see. So just remember that, and try to make sure that portrays something good.
Logan Cooke, thank you for being with us this morning, brother.
Thank y'all.
Thank you. All right. So as we come near the conclusion, I just want to remind you where we started in 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15. But sanctify Christ as the Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you with gentleness and with reverence. So here's what I want to be on your mind as we kind of draw this down. Logan's 29, is that correct? All right, so just think about this, all right? So 15 years ago, this was a typical teenager in a typical church in Mississippi, worshiping just like you did, listening to a preacher just like you typically do. He was really good at something, played on Friday nights just like you do, like your kids have done. And then he went to state, and now he's doing what he's doing. And we have this image where we put all these people on platforms, but the core of it, they're still just like you and I. And this is a man that's doing what he does, providing for his family, but trying to serve the Lord in the process. And so I don't know where that hits you, but I hope what does apply to you is that's the same story that you have. Maybe you don't have a foundation. Maybe you don't have the platform or the visibility that an NFL player does, but you have a platform. There are people that look at you and see you and connect with you that you've influenced every single week. And the question is, how do I use the platform and the influence I have to make Christ known, to influence others in the conversations and in the way I support, not just locally, but internationally? How do we do that? Look, I don't ever know how the Lord works in different situations. We had our students up here about a month ago, and they gave testimony, right? And it moved our people, and there was response. And so we want to have a time of response. We're going to have a time of prayer to close this thing out. But before that, I just want to have a time of invitation. I don't know. Maybe God laid on your heart some ideas as Logan talked, to say, you know what, I could be doing these things. I could be having these conversations. I could be leveraging the financial blessing that God has given me to serve others and bless others, whether locally or around other parts of the world. And so maybe God's impacting you. Maybe there's a time of response, whether it's here or there, but we want to give you that time to reflect, to process, and then to respond to the Lord as you feel led. So I'm going to pray for us. Brother Curtis, you come up. We'll have a time of invitation, and then we will conclude in prayer.